can't underestimate how driven Mark Zuckerberg really is.
Zuckerberg is just as visionary as Steve Jobs. He's going to prove just as influential as Bill Gates.
I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here.
Mark Zuckerberg is one of the most recognizable names on the planet. His face, his voice, even his mannerisms have been analyzed, criticized, and turned into memes countless times.
I think that the goal that we went into it with wasn't to make an online community, but sort of like a mirror for the real community that existed in real life.
But what's often missing from that public image is the quieter, more personal reality of how he actually lives.
My name is Barack Obama, and I'm the guy who got Mark to wear a jacket and tie.
I think most people still haven't really digested the scale of Facebook or how quickly it's grown.
The goal is obviously to get to ubiquity. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg wants everyone to be on this service.
Because beyond the boardrooms, beyond the billion-dollar decisions, there's a version of Zuckerberg that most people rarely get to see, a version that is far more controlled, intentional, and surprisingly grounded than you might expect.
One, he wanted to control his own thing, and two, if he's going to go against someone, he's going to crush them.
We spent 3 months working with Mark, being essentially led on. We were all blindsided. We had no idea that he was working on a competing product.
To understand his private life, you have to strip away the noise. Forget the headlines about Meta, forget the controversies, forget the larger-than-life image of a tech billionaire.
Mark Zuckerberg was a Harvard freshman with a gift for computer programming. He is the baby-faced, multi-billionaire power broker who rubs shoulders with the president.
What you're left with is someone who has built his lifestyle in the same way he built his company carefully, systematically, and with a very clear purpose. His days don't begin with chaos or extreme routines. There's no dramatic 4 a.m. wake-up or intense morning ritual designed to impress. Instead, his mornings are simple. He wakes up at a reasonable hour, often around 8 a.m., and like billions of other people, the first thing he does is check his phone. But unlike most people, this isn't just casual scrolling. He's looking at the platforms he helped create, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, not just as a user, but as someone constantly observing, learning, and analyzing. This blending of personal life and work is one of the defining traits of how Zuckerberg lives. There's no clear boundary where work ends and life begins. Instead, everything overlaps. His curiosity doesn't switch off, and his role as a builder doesn't pause just because he's at home. One of the most talked about aspects of his lifestyle is his clothing. The gray t-shirt, the hoodie, the jeans, it's become almost symbolic at this point. But it's not a branding trick or a fashion statement. It's a decision rooted in efficiency. By eliminating small, unnecessary choices like what to wear, he preserves mental energy for more important decisions. It might seem like a minor detail, but it reveals something deeper about how he thinks. He doesn't just optimize his business, he optimizes his life, and that mindset carries over into how he structures his environment. His home, for example, isn't designed to impress in the traditional sense. Yes, it's valuable. Yes, it's private. But it's not flashy or over the top in the way you might expect from someone with his level of wealth. Instead, it reflects a preference for comfort, control, and functionality. Over time, he's acquired surrounding properties, not to show off, but to create a buffer, a controlled space where he can live without constant intrusion. Privacy for someone like Zuckerberg isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. When your decisions impact billions of people, having a space where you can step away from that pressure becomes essential. And that's something he seems to prioritize heavily. But perhaps the most important part of his private life revolves around his family. His relationship with his wife, Priscilla Chan, plays a central role in how he lives. She comes from a completely different professional background, medicine, education, philanthropy, and that contrast seems to ground him in a way that business alone never could. Together, they've built a life that isn't centered purely on wealth or status. When they became parents, something shifted in Zuckerberg's perspective. He's spoken about how fatherhood changed the way he sees the future. It's no longer just about innovation or growth, It's about responsibility, about the kind of world his children will inherit, and that shift is visible in how he spends his time. Despite running a global tech empire, he makes space for family life. Not in a performative way, not as a public image strategy, but in a way that feels real. He shares moments occasionally, but not excessively. There's a balance, just enough to show that this side of his life matters deeply without turning it into a spectacle. At the same time, he's not someone who slows down completely. In fact, one of the most surprising aspects of his private life is how physically active he has become over the years. What started as simple fitness goals has evolved into something much more intense. He trains regularly and not just casually. He's taken up martial arts, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he approaches it with the same focus he brings to everything else. This isn't a hobby for him, it's a challenge, a system, a way to push himself mentally and physically. And in many ways, it mirrors his approach to business. Martial arts require patience, strategy, adaptability, all qualities that have defined his career. It's not about aggression or dominance, it's about control, timing, and understanding your opponent. Seeing Zuckerberg in that environment, on the mat, competing, training, feels almost like looking at a completely different person. But at the same time, it makes perfect sense. Because at his core, he's someone who is constantly trying to improve, to evolve, to test his limits. That drive for self-improvement extends beyond fitness. Over the years, he's set personal challenges for himself, learning new skills, reading more books, exploring different areas of knowledge. These aren't random decisions. They're deliberate efforts to grow, to expand his thinking, to avoid becoming stagnant. And yet, despite all of this, he doesn't come across as someone chasing attention. In fact, quite the opposite. His private life feels intentionally low-key. There are no constant displays of luxury, no extravagant parties making headlines, no endless attempts to showcase wealth. If anything, there's a noticeable restraint. That restraint becomes even more interesting when you consider the level of criticism he faces. Being in his position means constantly being under scrutiny. Every decision, every statement, every change to his platforms is analyzed and debated. It's a level of pressure that would overwhelm most people. But privately, he seems to handle it in a very specific way. He processes things analytically rather than emotionally. Instead of reacting impulsively, he observes, gathers information, and responds with control. That doesn't mean he's unaffected, it just means he's learned how to manage it. In the early days, criticism did get to him more. He's acknowledged that. But over time, he developed a kind of mental resilience, a filter, the ability to separate useful feedback from noise. And that ability plays a huge role in how he maintains stability in his personal life. Because without that separation, it would be almost impossible to function. Imagine carrying the weight of global opinion into your home, into your family life, into your personal space. It would be exhausting. So instead, he creates boundaries, not necessarily physical ones, but mental ones. Technology, of course, remains a constant presence in his life, but not in a passive way. He doesn't just use it, he experiments with it. His home has, at times, functioned as a kind of testing ground. He's built custom systems, explored AI-driven solutions, and integrated technology into his daily routines in ways that reflect his curiosity. For him, technology isn't just a tool, it's a language, a way of thinking. And that mindset doesn't disappear when he steps away from work. It follows him, shapes his environment, influences how he interacts with the world. But perhaps one of the most defining aspects of his private life is his approach to long-term impact. Through the Chan Zuckerberg initiative, he and his wife have committed significant resources to areas like education, science, and global health. And this isn't just about writing checks. It's about building systems, supporting research, and thinking decades ahead. This focus on the future ties everything together. His work, his family, his personal goals, they're all connected by a sense of long-term thinking. He's not just reacting to the present, he's constantly asking what comes next, and that question shapes how he lives. It influences his decisions, his priorities, even his daily habits. Because when you're thinking on that scale, short-term distractions lose their importance. And if you look even closer, there's another layer to his private life that often goes unnoticed: the way he relates to time itself. For Zuckerberg, time isn't just something to be spent, it's something to be allocated with precision. He doesn't overload his schedule with unnecessary commitments, and he's known for keeping meetings short and highly focused. Even in his personal hours, there's a sense that everything has its place. Whether it's family time, training, or simply unwinding, it's done with intention rather than impulse. This ability to stay intentional also affects how he disconnects. Contrary to what people might assume, he doesn't live in a constant state of digital overload. While technology is deeply embedded in his life, he's also aware of its downsides. There are moments where he steps back, where the focus shifts from screens to real-world interaction. That balance is subtle but important. It prevents burnout and helps maintain clarity in a life that could easily become overwhelming. Another interesting aspect is how he approaches learning. Zuckerberg isn't someone who relies only on past success. He actively seeks out new knowledge, often diving into areas completely outside his comfort zone. Whether it's understanding complex scientific research, exploring new languages, or staying updated with global trends, he treats learning as a continuous process rather than a phase. This constant curiosity keeps his thinking flexible and prevents him from becoming stuck in outdated ideas. Even his social circle reflects this mindset. He doesn't surround himself with noise or unnecessary attention. Instead, his interactions tend to be purposeful. People who challenge his thinking, contribute to his vision, or share similar long-term goals. It's not about having the largest network, but the most meaningful one. All of this ties back to a central idea: control without excess. Zuckerberg's life isn't about doing everything, it's about doing the right things consistently. And, in a world filled with distraction, that might be the most powerful lifestyle of all. What makes all of this so fascinating is how different it is from the typical image of a billionaire. There's no constant pursuit of luxury for the sake of it. No need to prove anything through material displays. Instead, there's a focus on control, efficiency, and purpose. His life isn't chaotic, it's structured. Not rigid, but intentional. Every part of it seems designed to support a larger goal, and yet, it's still human. It's still imperfect. He's still navigating challenges, balancing responsibilities, dealing with criticism, and trying to grow just like anyone else, just on a much larger stage. When you step back and look at the full picture, what you see isn't just a tech CEO or a billionaire. You see someone who has applied a very specific mindset to every aspect of his life. A mindset built. Mark Zuckerberg is one of the most recognizable names on the planet. His face, his voice, even his mannerisms have been analyzed, criticized, and turned into memes countless times. But what's often missing from that public image is the quieter, more personal reality of how he actually lives. Because beyond the boardrooms, beyond the billion-dollar decisions, there's a version of Zuckerberg that most people rarely get to see, a version that is far more controlled, intentional, and surprisingly grounded than you might expect. To